And coming in at number 10 is the Psycho Rangers. Now I was about to put the Space Rangers here, but then I remembered the Psycho Rangers. The evil princess Astronema created this group of evil rangers to draw on the power of her master, Dark Spectre, and they were designed specifically to hunt down the Power Rangers. Each Psycho Ranger had a specific fighting style unbeatable by the ranger that they were the evil version of, and they were even a serious threat to the Ranger team even without all of their members. The Psycho Rangers were used by Astronema not only to defeat the Power Rangers but also to severely weaken Dark Spectre, whom Astronema was trying to overthrow. But then, these guys even got monster forms that they turned into if their ranger forms were actually destroyed. They have an embedded second wind perk. That's so cool! The Space Rangers had to team up with the Galaxy Rangers to even take out a powered up version of these guys, and it was still a close fight. In the comics, we get to see the origin of the very first Psycho Ranger, Psycho Green, who was actually the Green Supersonic Ranger before he turned, and he served as the right-hand man for the Dark Spectre himself. Number 9. The Omega Rangers. The Omega Rangers were a small but ancient faction or team that are specifically around to operate in the most dangerous and most remote areas of space, and they're powered by the classical elements of fire, water, earth, and air. Now originally the team was around many millennia ago on the Morphin Master's homeworld of Safe Haven, and they were originally composed of Bledsoe, the Red Fire Ranger, Apophy, the Black Air Ranger, the Purim, Yellow Earth Ranger, Haza, the Blue Water Ranger, and Spark, the Gold Sun Ranger. But Spark turned on his fellow Rangers, being taken over by the possibilities of having death-defying powers. And he became the Death Ranger, which, if you've seen our most powerful Ranger video, which you should, is one of the most powerful Rangers out there, even if he's evil. Despite that, the Omega Rangers were able to stop and imprison Spark, and they were also really cool. I really like them, and they're only in the comics, so check them out. Number 8. The Aquitar Rangers. During the 3rd season of Mighty Morphin's Power Rangers, these aliens who come from Aquitons filled in for Earth's original team of Rangers when they were turned into children. And in terms of power, they appeared at least to be equal to Zordon's team, which is absolutely saying something. The other thing is that with a unique group of powers and really cool powerful Zords, this team was able to adequately fill in the gap left by Earth's out of commission forces, proving that they were exceptional in their own right, and a team to be reckoned with, particularly when considering how dangerous Rita Repulsa, Zed, and Master Vile were. They held their own, and they came back to reappear in the comics, which was super cool to see. Also, they were the first team that came into Power Rangers lore that showed that the Rangers were not just contained to Earth. They basically opened up the whole Power Rangers universe, and that's too cool for school right there. If you guys are enjoying this list, or me as a host, or the overall vibe here, make sure to check out and subscribe to Top 10 Nerd. It's all just more of the same stuff for nerds like you and us.
Number 7. Great Ring of Arakko. The Great Ring of Arakko is exclusively made up of Omega level mutants, which really tells you how much of a powerhouse team they would be. They are the ruling body of Arakko, which is the sister mutant island nation to Krakoa. In fact, Arakko and Krakoa are kinda like less siblings and more romantically tied. Ooh, romantic islands that are in love with each other. Both are sentient mutant islands, and for a long time they were actually attached to one another, literally and romantically, and were also in love with each other. Although now, they actually prefer to be separate. They've been separate for a long time, and they're like, you know what? The spark, it's gone. Arakko's ruling government has 4 distinct sections, which govern different parts of their civilization, with some areas having more power at given times. For example, in war times, Dawn is the area that typically gets more say, as this is the area that Dawn rules over and governs. The war times. For years, the Iraqi were at war with Amenth, so this would have been a very prominent section for many years in the past in terms of their ruling body. And it's something that the mutants of Arakko struggle with releasing themselves from, the obligation to always be on guard and kinda always be at war with people. While Uranos recently cleaned the clock of the Great Ring of Arakko, that should not undermine their strength, as Uranos is basically on a whole other level by himself as one of the most powerful, ruthless, and I would say evil Eternals that we've ever seen. And I know people would probably like put the X-Men above the Eternals or mutants above Eternals, but let me tell you, the Eternals are still pretty powerful, so we gotta respect. Number 6. Versus Inhumans Unity Team. Inhumans vs X-Men was an interesting time, to say the least. We basically had to come up with a reason for these two groups to fight one another, which we did by making the mutants deathly allergic to Terrigen mists, which had actually been released around the world, which ended up killing, a lot of mutants. As a result, Emma Frost made a martyr out of Cyclops, using him to propel forward her own plot to eliminate the threat of the Inhumans. She ended up being one of the main leaders of this team, which was sort of a unity squad, bringing together all mutant-related X-teams, primarily Magneto's X-Men, an X-Men team with past versions of the characters, and a more current X-Men team, in addition to some other mutants who have served on X-Men teams before. Number 4, the Five. The Five have to be one of my favorite teams to this day. They also in essence stand to represent this current era of X-Men, which seems sadly finally be coming to a close. Oh no, I'm going to be so sad to see it end. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I'm gonna need a box of tissues whenever if we do a video about that. Oh gosh, I'm gonna be crying the whole time. The Five are iconic in this way because they represent the power mutant kind now holds. The power over life and death. Mutants can resurrect other mutants, and not just that, they can resurrect other people as well, as it turns out, non-mutant people. So they don't just decide who lives and dies in regards to other mutants, but can also pass this judgment on to all the people of Earth. The Five are the team that allows this to happen. They're led by Hope Summers, and the roster includes Egg, Proteus, Tempest, and Elixir. Together, these 5 teammates can resurrect mutants by creating eggs and imbuing those eggs with life, growing clones of mutants who have died, and using their powers to not just recreate them physically, but also to recreate them on a genetic level, giving them back their powers and even modifying them to be as they were in real life. For example, Wolverine having his adamantium-coated skeleton, which is not part of his powers, but something he got later in life, they can do that and also give him those sweet adamantium claws. In addition, the Five also use backups Professor X keeps on Cerebro for all mutants to restore their memories as well, so that they are in essence the same person who died recently. Although the question of what this means for their soul is still something that I think we're considering, and I wonder if that will have repercussions after we end this era. Who hasn't died? That's gonna be the real question. Who hasn't died yet? We should do a list on that.
Number 3, Ranger Sentries. I feel as though some people are gonna hate this being put here because they aren't really technically a team. They're more like an army. The Ranger Sentries were essentially an army created by a corrupted and evil version of Tommy Oliver, the infamous and insanely powerful Lord Drakon. In the world of the coinless and alternate reality, Drakon created a whole army of humans who wore mass-produced Ranger armor. The Mastodon Sentries in their super cool black and white costumes acted as like the police force and the bulk of the army in this world. The pink Pterodactyl Sentries were the long-range sniper infantry and support for the Mastodons. The green Zeo Sentries were the mobile infantry, and they also had these awesome tank mechs. It was so cool. The Silver Space Sentries were the air support, and they had sweet jetpacks, and everybody loves jetpacks, and energy blasters, so obviously super cool. Then we have the Jungle Fury Rhino Sentries, who were essentially tanks, not like the awesome mechs, but like these big hulking strong guys in massive armor. So cool. There were the Blue Samurai Sentries, and they seemed to be like the melee foot soldiers. As a force of them with the Mastodon Sentries invaded the city of Corinth. We also got these awesome Dino Charged Gold Sentries who had these massive shields and like super heavy firepower. They would make up like the shield wall, and they were just so dope. Next up would be the Sabertooth Sentries, who were like the yellow ones, and these seem to act as lieutenants. I don't know. I think that's what they do. It wasn't really clear what they do, but they're a step under the Tyrannosaurus Sentries, who are the Red Rangers of the army. And these guys serve as the personal elite guard of Lord Drakon and the other evil forces like Rita Repulsa and Scorpina. That was a lot, I know, but as you might have picked up, each of these class of soldier were based on a ranger from across the Power Rangers universe after Drakon went through and took the morphers from at least one of every team. Powerful? Absolutely. A team? That's up to you guys to decide, but I'm gonna say yes. Definitely a team. Just a big team. An army, some could say. Number 2, Time Force Rangers. Coming from the year 3000, the technology available to this team of Rangers almost automatically outmatches any of the other man-made Ranger powers in existence, as does their futuristic military-like training. But, I mean, let's be honest. The most obvious show of power here is their ability to travel through frickin' time. Theoretically, if they broke their oath about ethical time travel, which is boring, nearly any adversary they came up against could be thwarted before they ever rose to power in the first place, or before they were even born. Obviously, though, if they messed up, they could ultimately threaten the time-space continuum, so that's pretty bad and they'll most likely stick to the rules, but still. The Time Force Rangers were an extremely strong group. Each Ranger's character had a strong sense of conviction to boot, especially Jen, their leader. And the Quantum Ranger? He made our list of most powerful Rangers for a reason. Also, again, they literally travel through time. That's kind of the main thing here. Time travel is super powerful. And in at number 1, it's the mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm sorry. They fought and teamed up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Godzilla, not to mention the Justice League. This group of teenagers with attitude went up against the Witch, Rita Repulsa, the head of an evil empire, Lord Zed, and even Rita's father, Master Vile. All villains who had enormous armies, resources, and raw magical power. As some of the most skilled fighters in the franchise, the MMPR team would jump headfirst into hand-to-hand combat. They had a slew of ever-developing and exponentially more powerful Zords and weapons to summon if the battle called for it. But, best of all, if the Rangers were forced to retreat, their tremendous resourcefulness would kick in as they worked together to develop a solution, innovate new technology, or just go grab like a long-lost artifact to use, creating a strength where there was once a weakness. So, like, while other teams may have had better power sources and all that fun, fancy, extra stuff, this team always found a way to adapt, kind of like Batman. But they also have the most experienced group of Rangers, especially when we take their comic book counterparts into consideration. Jason Lee Scott, Zach Taylor, Billy Cranston, Trini Kwan, Kimberly Ann Hart, and of course, they had Tommy Oliver.
Number 10, Gamma Corps. Not to be confused with Gamma Flight, the space program, or the other Gamma Flight, Alpha Flight training team. The Gamma Corps are actually made up of various different Gamma mutates, who basically were initially brought together to be used in hunting down the Hulk, believing him to be responsible for their fates and their mutations. They later learned, however, the truth and ended up turning on the Illuminati as a result. Team members included General Riker, their initial leader, Timothy Wilkerson, known as Prodigy, Gray, Griffin, Mr. Gideon, and Mess. While they were rescued by the Hulk from a Hulk AI and later depowered, I would say that at their height they could stand a chance against a more classic Avengers roster. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving us a thumbs up? Number 9, Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts might not be as good at teamwork in some cases, but they are definitely more interesting than the Avengers when it comes to their story, and despite being initially made up secretly of a group of villains led by Baron Zemo, the public even came to accept them as heroes. Over the years, their lineup has changed dramatically, and currently they are actually more of a mishmash of like less heroic folks and more heroic folks, although the fact remains that the Thunderbolts has always remained a more heroic, at least at heart, or at least anti-hero based team. One of their current members also happens to be Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau, who is known for packing a punch. Number 8, Titans 3. Titans 3 is a group that is similar but different to another one I had on part 1 of my list. It is basically the Defenders, sort of, but also may predate the Defenders, I believe, in terms of their appearance. The Titans 3 only appeared in a couple of issues of Submariner back in the 70s, making their first appearance in issue number 34 and their last in issue number 35. This team was led by Namor the Submariner and was brought together to save the world, as many great superhero teams have been brought together in the past. Joining Namor were the Hulk and the Silver Surfer, so no Doctor Strange here, but still a very powerful team I think, even with only 3 of them.
Coming in number 7, SPD. This might be a bit controversial, I'm not too sure. Some people don't like this, some people do. Power Rangers SPD was just a tiny part of Space Patrol Delta, basically an interplanetary police force that has jurisdiction over the whole galaxy. With that kind of a concept, they get points in the power scales for sure. They rely on an impressive amount of highly advanced technology to bring peace and order to the galaxy. For example, giant, exaggerated police vehicles. Super cool. What's really interesting though is that although major conflicts existed between the characters themselves, like between Jack and Sky, the team still pulled together and became strong enough to juggle multiple intergalactic threats throughout the series. Also, Doggy Kruger as the Shadow Ranger was strong enough to make up for almost any shortcomings the team might have had. And I haven't even touched on the fact that all the members of the B Squad in Power Rangers SPD, so the ones we actually focus on in the show and the comic, have a set of superpowers that they even continue to possess without their Rangers forms. They may not have been able to show their full potential in the show, but they sure as hell put up a hell of a fight. And also, definitely my favorite season of Power Rangers. That's just me. Number 6, Zeo. They derive their powers from a magic crystal whose power keeps magnifying over time. so that kind of automatically ranks them among the strongest. Theoretically speaking, the Rangers could have relied on the power of the Zeo Crystal to defend Earth for like basically forever, and it would just get stronger and stronger as they went on. But to get real here for a sec, production issues with the actual show meant they kind of had to switch to this weird car style, and it kind of brought everything just down a little bit. But despite that fact, the Zeo Rangers are one of the strongest Ranger teams in existence because of their firepower. They had a huge array of new, interesting, and absolutely wacky and weird Zords that could fend off massive attacks orchestrated by the Machine Empire, which itself was one of the strongest set of villains any Power Ranger team has faced ever. Number 5, the Super Megaforce. Also a controversial team. But with a name like that, how can they not be powerful? Now before I trigger you Ranger lovers out there, yes, I know the show of this team kinda sucked. They didn't really get individuality, but the comics fleshed them out a bit more, and I mean, their concept? Super Megaforce is one of the strongest teams in Ranger history. A team of Rangers that is completely backed up by all the past Rangers' powers in the history of the franchise, including a few we've never seen or heard of before, especially in the comics with the energy manipulating Squadron Rangers. And they even got Zordon's own apprentice as their mentor. How can they not be strong? They're more of an homage to every other team of Rangers, but because of that, they get points for nostalgia on top of their combined power. Coming in number 4 is Mystic Force. Magic. That's all I gotta say. No, I'm kidding. But Mystic Force is technically one of the most powerful Rangers teams ever. Their powers come directly from the Xenotome and ancient elemental magic, and not a lot of teams can say that. These Rangers cast incredibly powerful spells left and right. They wielded the power of really awesome Zords and had what might be the fanciest looking power-ups in Ranger canon with Legend Mode. But then their Red Ranger, Nick, he is amongst the most powerful Red Rangers around, but doesn't hold a candle to his dad, Leanbo, the Wolf Warrior, who also joined the team. Also, capes. They have frickin' capes, and that's really cool. Who else has capes? I don't have a cape. I wish I had a cape. I need a cape. Anyways.
Number 2, Nova Corps. When you think about it, the Nova Corps, despite having been destroyed by the Universal Church of Truth, is probably one of the most powerful organizations or groups likely in the universe. Originally, they were known as Xandar's line of defense, but as they grew, they ended up expanding the area under their protection, eventually extending to the whole of the Andromeda Galaxy, and I mean at least part of the Milky Way, as Earth also fell under their jurisdiction, where they, decided to take it under their wing. And while yes, as of Annihilation Scourge, they may be gone right now, with only Richard Rider as Nova surviving, it's more than likely that we will eventually see them return in the comics at some point. And usually when we do, I mean, they're just really powerful, so we should acknowledge that. Number 10, X-Statix. X-Statix was a team created to be a replacement for the original X-Force after they seemingly sacrificed themselves. The team was founded by Spike Freeman, who wanted to have a public mutant team backed by the government. Even the original roster of X-Statix would quickly become casualties, despite being a newly formed team. Coach originally was the team leader, but X-Statix would eventually rebel against his leadership, because he was kind of a jerk, to be honest, with members acting on behalf of their own motivations instead, and doing what they thought was best. X-Statix has had many different members over the years, as many of them died during their time serving on the team, which is kind of the whole joke of X-Statix. The roster has featured such members as Mr. Sensitive, Zeitgeist, Anarchist, Spike Freeman, Coach, Dead Girl, Dupe, You Go Girl, Gone Girl, Fatty, Rosa Lemper, The A, Vivisector, Bloke, El Guapo, Gin Genie, and Venus D. Milo, among others. Because like I said, a lot of them don't last very long. Number 8, Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys have to be one of my favorite lesser known villain groups of all time. So I cannot pass up an opportunity to mention how awesome and how powerful they are. The Nasty Boys were Mr. Sinister's group of henchmen following his Marauders group. The field leader for the team is Ruckus, whose mutant power allows him to absorb sound around him and use his vocal cords to project it back out as a powerful concussive sound-based blast. Initially, the Nasty Boys were used in a plot to to kill the Scarlet Witch, and later on in a plot to kill Malice. Their roster has included such members as One Man Team, Multiple Man, Hairbag, Ramrod, Gorgeous George, and of course, Slab. Number 7. Star Masters. Probably not a team you get to hear about often, I'd think, on YouTube, so let me get you up to speed here. Star Masters were brought together by the accusation that Quasar was guilty of murder, having believed to have massacred basically a bunch of people on a starship. Those that made up the team were the ones who believed him to be innocent. I also just love Wendell Vaughn and feel like we don't really get to talk about him too much on the channel for how powerful he is. Probably because Wendell, aka Quasar, isn't super prominent in the comics anymore these days, especially not Wendell as Quasar, because now we also have Avril. However, Wendell has appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy series in recent years. While Quasar was obviously on the team, so was Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Morphex, and Zenith. After Quasar was proven innocent, the team became more focused on maintaining peace throughout the cosmos. Basically, like OP cosmic peacekeepers, which I also just love as a team idea. Number 6. Transformers. Well, it's weird to think of the Transformers as a Marvel team, since, you know, they are with Hasbro. Marvel also happens to be the place where they kinda got their comic book start. And recently, IDW did lose the rights to the comics for Transformers. Although it's lucky for Marvel, and I do love their work, it is a little sad because I was also actually interested in the IDW Transformers stuff, which I guess I could go back and read. Or well, I guess they can't reprint it, so I'd have to find old stuff. Oh well. I'm sure there's still lots of awesome stuff in store in the future for Transformers comics, no matter who the rights belong to, because they're just a really cool property. And either way, the team will remain unstoppable. I'm still waiting for an Avengers vs Transformers event, so hopefully that is something we could also see in the future. Number 5. Multiversal Masters of Evil. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers. So this one, actually the proof is in the pudding in this case. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers, or rather the Avengers of 1 million BC, aka the prehistoric Avengers, but still, even when they went back in the day, the first Avengers were still some of the most powerful people on or off the planet of Earth. So I feel like that's still really impressive. I know before, in part 1, some people in the comments wanted to know which Avengers team we were comparing these other teams to. We're like, how can you compare them if you're not telling us the parameters, Amanda? Well, you know, I don't really have a lot of time to go through the parameters, but what I will say is I'm more thinking of these teams in comparisons generally speaking. So, meaning any and all versions of the team can really be contrasted to each other. No specific parameters per se, although I am leaning more towards like classic Avengers, I guess when I'm thinking of it. These are more teams that would just be considered more powerful than at least one of the Avengers rosters. And we already know the Multiversal Masters of Evil succeeded there because they already beat the prehistoric Avengers. The Multiversal Masters of Evil are different from the standard team, and they actually include Doom Supreme, King Killmonger, Black Skull, Dark Phoenix, Ghost Goblin, and Kid Thanos. Number 4. Squadron Supreme. Squadron Supreme is kind of like Marvel's version of the Justice League. And I know what you're thinking, but wait a minute, Amanda. I thought the Avengers was like Marvel's version of the Justice League. Well, yes and no. The Avengers team doesn't really have powerhouses in the same way as the Justice League does, and Squadron Supreme kinda does that a little bit better than the Avengers does, if we're comparing. Marvel even went so far as to rename the alternate reality version of them that also appeared in 2021's Heroes Reborn event the Squadron Supreme of America. Get it? Like the Justice League of America. Their ranks typically include Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, Blur, Hyperion, and Warrior Woman or Princess Power, whatever name she's going by, aka Zarda Shelton. She goes by both depending on which version of her we're talking about. Number 3. Exterminators. Another secret powerhouse team that is one of my all-time favorites, and which I don't think we give enough love to on this channel, is the Exterminators. This team was primarily made up of young mutants who were saved by the earlier incarnation of the X-Factor team, back when that was a government-funded team and was kinda like the X-Men, the old X-Men reformed again. Standout members for Exterminators throughout the years have included Rusty Collins, aka Fire Fist, made popular by his very different but memorable appearance and adaptation in the Deadpool film franchise, Cable, Boom Boom, Richter, Whiz Kid, Lila Cheney, Cannonball, and of course, in the more recent team roster, Cora of the Burning Heart from Morocco, who is also so cool. The Exterminators first appeared in the 80s in their own self-titled series. Number 2. The Sisterhood. One of my favorite lesser known but immensely powerful teams in the Marvel Universe is the Sisterhood, also known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Part of the reason why they're referred to as just the Sisterhood though, is that technically not all of their members are mutants, so don't be confused by the name. However, all of their members have been women who are or have generally been acknowledged as supervillains, though not all of them even are supervillains, so yeah. The team was founded and led originally by Madeline Pryor. Throughout the years, members have included Lady Deathstrike, Celine Gallio aka the Black Queen, Typhoid Mary, Lady Mastermind, the other female mastermind named Martinique, Psylocke, Quanon, Spiral, Enchantress, and Raiko. Number 1. God Squad. The God Squad is about as powerful as they sound, but still, they remain one of the lesser known teams in the Marvel Universe. I was kinda hoping we'd get like a God Squad reference in Thor Love and Thunder, but sadly, no God Squad. Maybe that was one of the things that got cut, who knows. The team was originally assembled by the Council of Godheads and first came together during the events of Secret Invasion. The team first formed in the Incredible Hercules issue 117 in 2008. The original roster included Adam the Demogorge, Snowbird, the Eternal Ajax, and Amatsu Mikaboshi, later known as the Chaos King. The roster would go on to include such impressive members as Silver Surfer, Galactus, Circe, also of the Eternals, Thor, Amadeus Cho, and of course, Hercules himself. Number 10. X-Force. X-Force is known for being one of the most ruthless mutant and X-Men related teams in the comics. It was initially more Cable's team and was used like a sort of time police force to remove threats to the timeline. However, as time went on, the name became repurposed and is now more associated with someone like Wolverine, known for being a sort of mutant black ops team, usually that he leads. Currently, Krakoa's equivalent to America's CIA, and in fact very currently, as of right now in 2022 at the time of this recording, the team is more Hank McCoy, Beast's team, which has recently moved out of the shadows, with Beast deciding to no longer basically hide all the morally questionable, super shady decisions that he's been making to eliminate threats and keep Krakoa safe. Although sometimes it seems like his true aim may actually be something more sinister, because it is an interesting way of trying to keep people safe. And friends, before I move on to my next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love the X-Men, then we have a playlist for you. It's our X-Men playlist. Go check it out and you can watch all the X-Men content that we've done. Done a lot. Number 8. Avengers Unity Division. The Avengers Unity Division is basically a combination of X-Men and Avengers, which makes it pretty OP. At least it was a combination of both these teams when it first started. The team was created by Captain America as a result of the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. After the fallout, Cap felt pretty bad about basically not really helping the mutants more in regards to promoting them towards humanity, and making sure that the world over did not really hate and fear mutants. At least, he felt as responsible as he, as one man, could do. But he's a pretty influential guy, so he was like, maybe I should have been helping you guys more. In an effort to do this now, he decided to bring together Avengers and X-Men to work together, creating the Avengers Unity Division. Later on, Inhumans would even be added into the mix as well, so really this team is all about bringing people from different worlds who maybe don't always see eye to eye together, which is a really beautiful sentiment when you think of it. On the initial team, which was known editorially as Uncanny Avengers, we had Captain America leading and joined by Havoc, Thor, Rogue, Scarlet Witch, and Wolverine. Rogue and Scarlet Witch were an especially challenging combination of characters to have on this team, as Rogue vehemently hated Wanda for what she had done to mutants during House of M, and saw her basically as a villain. In fact, most mutants did at that time, so this was in general a powerful team on paper, but one that also came with a lot of issues and a lot of baggage, to be honest. Of course, that's what makes it so interesting to read, right? We're here for the drama. Number 7. Power Pack. The Power Pack is a team who many see as being less powerful or strong because, well, they started out as kids. But we've seen from looking into the future the potential for this team and its members when it comes to their power levels. And just because it's a younger team, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve your respect and don't deserve to be hyped, especially since they were created in part by one of the Marvel greats, Louise Simonson. The Power Pack first appeared in their own series in Power Pack issue number 1 in 1984 and were created by Simonson, June Brigman, and Bob Vycek. The team members include the Power Siblings, Alex aka Zero G, Katie aka Energizer, Julie aka Light Speed, and Jack aka Mass Master, and have also featured Lord Kofi Whiteman, cousin to the Alefire Whiteman, who first bestowed powers on the Power Siblings, and of course Franklin Richards, who was also on the team for a little bit. Number 6. Hellions. I feel like this is a list that really was made for me specifically to talk about because I just love gushing over teams and and characters who are lesser known but still are so amazingly strong and deserve to be acknowledged. Case in point, the Hellions. The Hellions is a team that originally started out as Emma Frost's own mutant team and more recently was given over to Mr. Sinister to manage in terms of the team title. Technically these are kind of like two different Hellions teams, but I like to acknowledge all the history of a team name because I think that's important. Just like we have two Marauders that are quite different, but the Marauders' name is still connected to both, if that makes sense to you. On Krakoa, Sinister's Hellions was made up of the more volatile mutants on the island and was intended to act as sort of a rehabilitation group for them, where they could work out their frustrations via less desirable or perhaps marketable missions. The most recent roster included Psylocke aka Quanon, Nanny, Orphan Maker, Grey Crow, Empath, Wildchild, and Havoc. And honestly, I miss them so much. Please bring the Hellions back. It ended really sadly and they deserve better. Number 5. Agents of Atlas. Agents of Atlas is another team that really deserves more love and respect just based on its leaders and its roster. It's filled with powerhouses, whether we're talking about the original team or the Asia-based team, and currently the leader of this team I believe is Jimmy Woo, my guy! I love Jimmy Woo in the MCU and in the comics. The character has actually been around since the 1950s, so yeah, been around for a while. Members for Agents of Atlas have included Shang-Chi, Miss Marvel, Namora, Venus, Uranian, who was once known as Marvel Boy, Arrow, Io, Giant Man, White Fox, Swordmaster, and Silk. Number 3. Extinction. The Extinction team truly is a scary one. They were around at a time when the Phoenix Force was believed to be returning to Earth. It was thought that the Phoenix Force wanted to merge with mutant messiah Hope Summers and have her act as its host. While the X-Men were more optimistic about the Phoenix's return, the Avengers were not so optimistic. As a result, the mutants deployed their own team to fight against the Avengers, but which was initially also created to defend the mutant island of Utopia and, honestly, the world against extinction-level threats. Hence the name, the Extinction Team, you know what I mean? The Extinction Team included Cyclops, Magneto, Namor, Storm, Dagger, Magic, Hope Summers, Emma Frost, and Colossus. Talk about a powerhouse lineup. Never mind the Phoenix Force, this team in and of itself seems frightening enough to justify the Avengers' concern, assuming they don't trust the mutants having power, which, while at times both teams have been allied, has always seemed to remain a bit of a touchy subject to the Avengers, who have a history of not playing well with other major superhero teams in the Marvel Universe, to be honest. In fact, they also even have a history of not playing well with each other within their own team. So yeah, me just throwing shade at the Avengers. Number 2. The Phoenix 5. 5 seems to be a magic number when it comes to the mutants. While the 5, as they are simply known, are all about life and resurrection, the Phoenix 5 have the potential to just straight up destroy worlds. Or I suppose they could also save them, if they can avoid being corrupted by the Phoenix's power, that is. The Phoenix 5 are what some members of the Extinction Team become after the Phoenix Force arrives on Earth. During a fight with the Avengers, the Phoenix Force is split into 5 pieces, when Iron Man attempts to destroy it. These pieces end up merging with 5 hosts, creating the team we know as the Phoenix 5. Of the Extinction Team, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magic, and Colossus are the ones who end up as the Phoenix's hosts, dividing the team. While initially the members of the Phoenix 5 attempt to use their newfound power for good, they all end up kinda getting corrupted, with other members also stealing their power until it is all combined into one host, ending with Scott Summers aka Cyclops. We all know how that went. Professor X ended up as a dead guy. Number 1. X-Men. Obviously one of the best and most powerful around has to be the X-Men. I mean, come on. Of course I'm gonna pick the X-Men. I mean, is it too obvious? I don't know, but it's true. And I would say we've actually had one of the best X-Men rosters in recent years, with the previous roster that included Jean Grey, Cyclops, Synch, Lara Kinney's Wolverine, Rogue, Polaris, and Sunfire. While the team has had many different rosters throughout the years that have been standout, Jerry Dugan's team was pretty stacked, especially when you consider you have 2 people that can use other people's powers, one of whom can sync with anyone else on the team. And the current team as well is also fairly stacked, especially with Bobby returning to the main X-Men team and him being a pretty unstoppable force as an Omega level mutant. I mean, honestly, I think Iceman, if he was just a team, he could be a one-man team. That's how powerful he is. If we also considered amassing all the X-Men that had ever served to make one giant giant super team, then the X-Men would also definitely be the most powerful, as they've had so many members rotate on and off the team throughout the years. Even the team from the classic era, still being younger too, at the time that is, they're not as young now, were pretty powerful. And then of course there were the 80s and the 90s for X-Men, which also saw a lot of really powerful lineups, to be honest, with Kitty Pryde, Logan's Wolverine, Rogue, Havoc, Polaris, and even powerhouses like Magneto and Rachel Summers joining the team. Rachel Summers herself could also be a one-woman team.